I was almost surprised, Harry, that a relatively simple finding was 68 pages long. They seem to really want to go into a lot of detail about why or why not for something that most people who are not lawyers would say it's reasonable to contain some of the things that Donald Trump says that could be intimidating to witnesses or jurors or people like that.
It's an interesting point. It happens a lot. I think one reason is they had already started writing before the argument. In a big case like this, I think Judge Millett was already doing it. And then second, they really wanted to dig in deeply and give full weight, which is to say limited weight to the First Amendment part. As you say, they sounded all the most important themes, especially on the rule of law, and the narrowings were pretty inconsequential. Jack Smith, I was a U.S. attorney. It really does go with the office. That's not a big problem. And really, they had her back in every important way. One other big point is timing. They denied his motion to postpone until after the trial. They actually put a little sentence in there. The trial will be well over before the election. They got the opinion out quickly, and I think they really showed. Oh, and they could have remanded. They changed it a little. They could have sent it back to her. Instead, they just decided. I think it showed their real focus on the timing here, which, of course, everyone is thinking about.
Harry, important or not legally, within the first few paragraphs of Jack Smith's indictment of Donald Trump, he talks about the First Amendment. He says very specifically, Donald Trump has, under the First Amendment, lots of things he has a right to. He can lie about the election. He can continue to lie about the election. He can say it was stolen. He can seek redress from courts and recounts and audits and all that kind of stuff. But there are limitations to his rights. Donald Trump goes back to this one over and over and over again. And he carries on outside of the courts about how this is an infringement on his speech. This is he's really relying on this idea that he should be free to say anything he wants anywhere. This court is saying that this trial has to happen in the courtroom. The decision has to come from a jury of his peers inside a courtroom. Why is Donald Trump so hung up on this First Amendment stuff?
Well, I didn't know that was where you were going to. Why is he hung up on First Amendment stuff? I think it obviously serves his political purposes, but they really made the right theme. Yes, they talked about that, but when push comes to shove, we're not talking about the First Amendment. That was his argument. It's a big First Amendment case. They're saying there's a different government interest here in the integrity of the proceedings. Now, of course, he's going to push the First Amendment line to give widest berth possible to the things he wants to say, but they were pretty clear where the First Amendment must end, and it must end where it ends for other criminal defendants in screwing up the integrity of the trial itself. So as to that, in that sphere, Ali, he is as restrained as any criminal defendant must be.
But they made the point, no more so than any criminal defendant. They kept saying
they're very aware.
There's a public interest in hearing.
We all need to know what he can say legitimately.
Yes. Yeah.
For instance, they said you can talk about witnesses like Bill Barr, but not witnesses as qua witnesses. You can't disparage their testimony. You could call, Mike Pence a liar on the campaign trail if you want to. You just can't go over the testimony. That is the right line. You've got to protect the trial. That's what she's doing. I think it's really important that the Court of Appeals has her back. I think it augurs very well for going forward in the cases up to and past the actual trial.
What happens? Does the Supreme Court touch this?
I don't think this one. So, they're hovering over a few, including, most importantly, the immunity order. But I don't see, and it is true that the constitutionality of a gag order for a public political candidate they haven't addressed before. But I don't think there are 4 votes to take this one, and I think they're going to be pretty gun shy about intervening in a pending case against Trump in 2024.